It is the stuff of legends. Well, inside your organization anyway. It is both tangible and intangible. If you are in, you know the value of the influence it provides. But if you are on the outside, it can seem impossible to get in. I am speaking of the table. You know the one, that mythical location inside your organization where the important people talk and stuff gets done, or decided at least. Some communicators enjoy a seat of honor at the table, while others are still working to earn theirs. If you're feeling like you still haven't found an empty seat, this episode is for you. Today on the Internal Comms Procast, we talk to Elisabeth Wang from Piedmont Healthcare. Elisabeth will share the story of how she earned her seat at the table and why earning yours is so important to the future success of you and your organization.
There's been a lot of conversations lately about this seat at the table kind of mentality. And if you don't have a seat at the table, do you build your own? And I understand the thought behind that. And I think that there's opportunity that communicators have for building collaboration within the organization. But I don't think that the internal communicator, can ignore the fact that there is a table. Every organization has a senior table, and things are being talked about there that if you're not a part of those conversations, then you probably are not valued within the organization the way that you should be.
Circle is a proud sponsor of the Internal Comms Procast. Circle's suite of easy-to-use tools helps communicators work smarter by automatically sharing the right message with the right person at the right time. But the value doesn't stop there. Circle's insights can give you the data you need to demonstrate the value and efficacy of your communications. Let Circle make your communications job easier. Request a demo at circle.com. That's CERKL.com. Today's guest is an internal and external communications practitioner at the top of her game. If you are a PRSA Employee Comms Section member, she is a past leadership chair for the section and played a critical role in the planning and execution of past Connect conferences.
Hey, I'm Elisabeth Wang. I lead internal and external communications for Piedmont Healthcare. We are an 11-hospital system. We're the largest healthcare provider in the state of Georgia. We're pretty much all over the state, and we have 23,000 employees.
Elisabeth's work with Piedmont began more than a decade ago with a huge problem to solve. How do you unite communications throughout a large organization with multiple locations? It was in this position, Elisabeth says, she learned her first 2 tips.
I started with Piedmont 11 years ago. At that time, we were 4 hospitals, about 8 to 9,000 employees, and I was hired for a new position focused on physician communications. At that point, we had 4 hospitals, and there were 4 different ways of communicating with each of the medical staff. So there wasn't a really good or efficient way. The problem was there wasn't a single way of communicating with the physicians. Well, when I took that job, I didn't know that 2 years later, Piedmont would be going down the road of implementing an electronic medical record. But what I was doing when I first started in creating efficiencies in how we communicated to the medical staff, a standard way of communicating, standard practices based on best practice. The communications operations that I was implementing and the tools and the vehicles that I started using laid the foundation for the organization to be able to communicate efficiently and effectively with physicians through that electronic medical record implementation process. But I had some important stakeholders that I needed buy-in in what I was trying to do. And so one of the things that I started doing kind of right out of the bat was building relationships with the local hospital leadership, and in particular the CEOs. Physician communications was a pain point for all of them. And so one of the things that I found that has really helped me throughout my career at Piedmont is that by helping leaders solve their problems, they would be willing to help me solve mine. So I had been given a task to do by the CEO of the system. But I also knew that I couldn't achieve that I wouldn't be successful with what I'd been tasked to do if I didn't have the buy-in from those local CEOs. So I made sure that the plan, the strategy that I came up with took into account their pain points and helped solve some of their problems while I was also solving mine. And that's really a lesson that, or a practice that has been a part of my career for 11 years, is helping leaders solve their problems and finding a way to solve mine at the same time.
To earn your seat at the table, Elisabeth says you will need to understand your organization's big goals and align your work to assist. Here's how she tackled that at Piedmont.
We really have to bring value. A lot of times that is numbers, that's metrics, but I think that's being a good problem solver. That's listening first to find out what the problems are and what we're trying to achieve, what the organization is trying to achieve. And then just joining those efforts and bringing your unique skills and talents as a communicator to the problem to help achieve whatever the organization is trying to achieve. I think that that's really key for an internal communicator, and to helping a communicator be successful is look at what the organization is after and then go work with them to solve for that. And I think that's how you earn a seat at the table. And so what I've tried to do and what I've tried to help my team do is really understand what's being talked about at the table and figure out how you bring value to that conversation or to that problem, and how are you part of the solution. And so the internal communicator, in order to earn their seat at the table, should be looking for ways that their skills, their resources, their talents can contribute to the success of the organization as a whole and solve for those problems that the organization is solving for. So my team works very closely. As a hospital, we exist because of the patients and to provide high quality patient-centered care. My team works very closely with the people who are trying to reduce hospital-acquired infections, reduce serious safety events, and improve the overall quality, safety, and service of Piedmont Healthcare. That's one of the major initiatives that the hospital, one of the major problems we're trying to solve. And my team has a front row seat to helping the hospital achieve that. Similarly, stewardship is a huge part of the culture at Piedmont Healthcare. With the external strain on hospital reimbursement, we're getting paid less and less for what we do. We've got to continue to control costs in order to do that in a cost-effective manner. And so the stewardship initiatives that Piedmont has taken on, my team has been right there beside those leaders helping with the stewardship initiatives. So from a quality standpoint, we've helped the organization reduce hospital-acquired infections by 68% over the course of a couple of years. And since the beginning of 2015, Piedmont Healthcare has realized over $400 million in cost savings or revenue enhancement through our stewardship initiative. So my team has been a part of all of those initiatives that have helped the organization get to a really good place when it comes to significant organizational challenges, but also significant organizational success.
One of the conversations being had at the table is around the threat of cybersecurity. In many cases, the danger stems from employees not understanding how hackers try to penetrate systems and what is at stake. That's where leadership can use an internal comms pro like you. Here's how Elisabeth and her team have helped Piedmont with this important initiative.
Think about what your senior team, what's the conversation going on at the table and how can you add value to it? Well, cybersecurity is one of those conversations for healthcare right now. Actually, cybersecurity is probably a conversation at every table with every industry right now, but specifically healthcare. Some reports will tell you that we are the most targeted industry. Others will tell you we're one of the top 4. But it's a huge concern and a huge risk for the organization because it's the type of thing, the way that cyber criminals infiltrate your organization, it could be through a single employee. So last fall, we ran some tests, and we've got a fantastic info security team at Piedmont, but they ran some tests and realized that we had a real issue that we needed to address. And so I had worked with them peripherally before in just kind of ongoing communications, but in the fall, the executive director of info security called me and she said, we've got a real problem we need to solve. And looking at that data, I totally agreed. And so we worked very closely together to create what was really meant to be a 12-week plan to reach every employee with hard data, because as I've said before, we are an organization that we appreciate data, and that's how we are motivated when we're presented with a problem with data behind it. So a 12-week plan to reach every employee based on data with a very simple message to rat out bad emails and the call to action to use a tool that InfoSecurity had provided to help identify phishing attempts with the organization. And so it's been an incredibly successful program, and the results that we've seen, we're not 100% there yet. I don't know that any organization can say that they're ever 100% safe from cyber criminals, but we've made some significant progress in the last 6 months in helping make our organization more secure. And that was through a very concerted communications program where InfoSecurity couldn't have done that by themselves. They didn't have the expertise to know what were the best methods for communicating with an organization. And as great as IS is at what they do, they're also not always the most creative. So it took the collaboration between communications and InfoSecurity to create a really strong campaign that could be compelling and effective to help make our organization more secure from attempts from cyber criminals.
More from Elisabeth Wang after this break. Internal Comms Pro is proud to present the Rise and Shine series, coming to a city near you. Engaging and energizing, Rise and Shine events are designed with the IC Pro in mind. A featured speaker kicks off the event with a talk about the most current strategies, tools, and best practices. Then a panel of experts shares how they applied the speaker's topic in their own organizations. You will leave with new ideas you can actually implement the next day. See where we are going to be next and join the fun at internalcommspro.com/shine. We're back with more tips for earning your seat at the table with Elisabeth Wang. 6 years ago, Piedmont welcomed a new CEO who brought with him a passion for measurement that aligns perfectly with Elisabeth's next tip for earning your seat at the table. Build a culture of transparency and accountability through reporting.
Our CEO, when he started about 6 years ago, that's one of the things that he really brought to our culture that has been great for our culture is a rigorous adherence to measurement. And back to stewardship, when you lower hospital-acquired infections in your hospital, that provides a lower cost of care. So it is less expensive to care for a patient who hasn't gotten an infection than it is to care for a patient who has gotten an infection. And so this rigorous culture that measures everything has really helped the organization achieve the results that we've achieved in the last few years and has set us on the path that we have been on. And communications plays a strong part of that. I'm a fervent believer in transparent communications and lucky to have a leadership team that does too. So our balanced scorecard, which is the tool where we show where we are and where we're going on all of these various metrics, is published, updated monthly, and published and made available to every employee within Piedmont Healthcare. It's the front page of our intranet. So there's a real expectation that our employees understand exactly what we're measuring and exactly what we're trying to get to, because how do we expect them to help us if we're not telling them where we are and where we want to go?
If you are still not making progress on your mission to earn a seat at the table and are beginning to feel a bit discouraged, Elisabeth's next tip might be perfect for you.
I would say ask for a stretch project. Again, look at what the organization's trying to achieve, and is there some big goal that they're trying to tackle that you'd like to work with? So for me, passion comes from kind of really feeling that my work is important. And I would tell an internal communicator that if you're lacking passion, look around you and see what work's going on that you think is important, that you know that you would be proud of if you could say, I had a part in making that successful. And then go ask your leader if you can in some way work on that project. I know very few leaders who would turn down that request. Now, it may mean that you're taking on a new assignment or you're taking on new work in addition to the work that you already have. So it may mean adding something to your plate when there's not anything that's going to be taken away. So understand that re-energizing may come with a price. It may come at a cost of having more to do. But I have found personally that even when that's the case, that new work that's exciting, that re-energizes you, that rekindles that passion, far outweighs the weight of what may already feel like a plate that's overrunning. So I've always found those stretch assignments to be more valuable than they are draining.
When embarking on a stretch project, there are some key questions Elisabeth says you should ask to frame the million little choices you will make down the road.
First, what are you trying to achieve? What are you solving for? What are you hoping to achieve? What does success look like for you? For our organization, it is which metric on the balanced scorecard or metrics on the balanced scorecard are you trying to move? And, what do you think is reasonable? So helping really understand the problem and where they're trying to get to is foundational to helping leaders solve their problems. And a lot of times it may be the internal communicator that's the first person to say, what's the metric or what are you trying to get to? Because they may have some kind of vague sense that there's a problem out there, but it may be the questions that the internal communicator asks that helps them really create a clear vision for where they're trying to get to and how they will judge success or how they will know they've been successful when they get there.
Elisabeth believes communicators can enjoy a more strategic role inside their organization if they prepare for the next era of internal comms now. Here's what she believes the future will look like.
Well, just like a lot of people, we're being asked to do more with less. So I think that the trends of user-generated content will continue. We will be more curators and consultants than creators and writers, though I think that the writing skills that we need, the creation skills that we need, those will never go away. But I think that we will be more useful to our organization in the future when we can really step into that role of strategic advisor and consultant in helping not just leaders, because I think this is another trend. I think that there's been a lot in the past 10 years about helping your executives be good communicators. I think that the trend moving forward is going to be helping your subject matter experts be good communicators. It's not just being a consultant and a strategic advisor for your executive leaders, but it's really being a strategic advisor to subject matter experts who are often at the gemba. So to use a lean process, those are your frontline staff who are doing the work. Very often they are the subject matter expert. And so you're helping them explain to the organization what it is they do and how they help the organization. So I think that we will continue to grow in our role as consultants, and that we will continue to we will grow in our reliance on user-generated content to help tell the stories of our organizations. It's going to require that we give up some control. And it means that we learn to work differently, but there are a lot of roles out there that are having to learn to work differently. It means that relationships are going to be more important. We can't be happy just sitting behind a desk, banging on the keyboard all day. We've really got to get out and be a more visible part of the organization.
We want to thank Elisabeth for sharing her tips with us. We will have a breakdown of Elisabeth's 5 seat earning tips on internalcommspro.com/podcast. Just look for this episode's post. If you'd like to connect with Elisabeth, you can follow her on Twitter at Elisabeth_Wang. And if you haven't already, Elisabeth encourages you to join PRSA's Employee Communications section.
I would encourage you, if you're an internal communicator out there and you're feeling alone, join the Employee Communications section of PRSA. We're about 800 members strong. It's a fantastic community that's very active on social, so you can join in conversations there. But then once a year, we do have a conference that has sold out for the last 3-4 years. It's PRSA Connect. It's in May. This coming year, 2020, we're going to be in Charlotte, North Carolina. It's a conference that takes place over 3 days where it is solely focused on internal communications. There are a ton of people who are like you, who are trying to learn, who are the unicorns in their organizations, that there aren't other people who speak their language. And this is a great conference to come be a part of, to meet other people who speak your language and who are, regardless of industry, probably trying to solve the same problems that you're trying to solve for. So join us there. And in 2020, it's in Charlotte.
Internal Comms Procast is produced by Super Awesome Media. Our executive producer is Rachel Foles. Gina Moravec is our associate producer. Our theme music is Please Listen Carefully by Jazzer via the Free Music Archive. Our intro music is Sea of Glass by Connor Sweeney. Thank you for listening.